I have now had 24 hours or so to digest the Danny Briere press conference, the mid-season state of the team. And a day later, I do not like what I heard. Now, in fairness, the first time that I watched it, I was sitting in the Snow the Goalie studio at Wells Fargo Center preparing for a live episode of Snow the Goalie with Bundy and Ant. And we had it up on a phone, and I think we missed the first couple of minutes. And I have to be honest, I absolutely hated parts of what was said in the press conference. I'm going to bring it up here in a second because I want to make sure that I'm being fair here, that when I critique what I heard and what I didn't like, I want to make sure that you hear it from the GM's mouth, and then I'm going to hit you with it. Because I think it was honestly one of the more disappointing press conferences you could have had. And I think that there are legitimate reasons to be concerned with whatever the fuck this team is calling a rebuild, because it does not feel like a rebuild. I want to start with something that was alarming that Briere had to say about Alexei Kolosov and his willingness to go down to the AHL after Tortorella has now named Ivan Fedotov the number 2. I think I have this queued up right. Let's go over to Danny.
If you guys make that decision.
Let me go back and get Charlie O'Connor's full question.
We're looking at different things here.
I guess given everything that happened at the start of the year, is he willing to go down to the AHL if you guys make that decision?
As far as I know, yes. I don't.
As far as I know, yes. What the fuck does that mean? He's your player. You own his rights. We mean as far as I know, he's willing to go down. Okay, let's continue.
Have any reasons to believe that he would. I mean, if that would be his decision, but it's not. It has nothing
That would be his decision. What?
to do with anything that's going on. That he was number 2 at some point, or that he's number 3 right now. That's all torts. I don't decide.
What is all torts? Whether he plays or not, sure. Whether he's up here with the team, that's you, homie. You're the guy who controls the roster.
Who plays, how much they play. I manage the team and the roster, and
Correct.
I let them coach.
Okay. I have a significant issue there. Can we just have a moment? Let me see if I can bring back the good old fashioned dynamic tracking here. Oh, there we go. Hey, how you doing? How you doing? So Danny Briere says that he believes that Alexei Kolosov would be okay with going down to the minors. He'd be okay with it. No reason to believe that Kolosov wouldn't be okay with going down to the AHL. And then also notes the fact that whether or not he plays is up to Tortorella, true. But he also says that it's Kolosov's decision on whether or not he's okay with going to the AHL. Bullshit. What are we talking about? We're still on this. You're 47 games into the season. What are we talking about Alexei Kolosov? If he wants to go down to the AHL, he can. If he doesn't want to go down, what? Are we seriously doing this again? We're really going to do this thing where it's, Alexei Kolosov, we don't want to run the risk of losing him. He's going to go back to Belarus? Is he going to try to like bribe the KHL to give him a spot? What are we talking about? He's not an NHL goalie. He's an AHL caliber goalie right now. He needs to go down to the A and figure out how the hell to play goalie in North America. And then maybe next year he can come up and compete for the backup spot. But I'm sorry, we're 47 games into the season. He looks outmatched every time he gets on the ice. What the hell are you talking about? It's his decision. No, it's not. You're the GM. You're supposed to earn your playing time. He doesn't belong at this level. What are you doing? It is infuriating. Sam Ersson, your number 1 goalie. Great. Ivan Fedotov, who your coach said weeks ago is the number 3. He played himself into being the backup. Excellent. You didn't want to put him on waivers. You were afraid of what the contract was going to potentially do. You were afraid that maybe, despite the contract, another team was going to try to claim Fedotov off waivers, and then you're left empty-handed. What the hell is Kolosov doing here? Why are you carrying 3 goalies? Oh, well, maybe they're worried that Sam Erson's going to get hurt again. Fine! When they have to put Erson on IR again, bring Kolosov back up. That's what you do with a young goalie. That's what you do with a guy that you've given NHL reps to. Or maybe, just maybe, as much as it would be disgusting, maybe you just tell Alexei Kolosov, you're going to go finish the year in the AHL. And if there's an injury at the NHL level, Cal Peterson's going to come back up. Because I don't know if anybody remembers or not, but it's supposed to be a rebuilding team. The whole fucking point of a rebuild is to get elite talent. That's the whole point. And now the Flyers are once again very much stuck in hockey purgatory. They are doing the same damn thing. Now, Chuck Fletcher led this team into hockey purgatory because he was a dolt. He led the Flyers into hockey purgatory because he kept making stopgap moves, believing that this team was significantly more talented than it was. Briere isn't making any acquisitions to make the team better, but he has the option to move players who could make the team worse. You're in year 2 of a rebuild. Do you know how many GMs in any league, let alone the NHL, had the opportunity to legitimately tear the thing down as much as they want and then choose, you know what, we're going to let the players decide, which is another thing that he gets to at some point is, man, it drives me nuts. All right, I'm going to go back over to Briere because there's more that he had to say. I almost regret the fact that he had more to say following it, but here we go.
What's just, I guess, the broad organizational philosophy headed into that one?
Nothing has changed. It's still the same.
The Four Nations Cup. We don't care.
The reality is, there's not a lot of high-end centermen in this league. And
this is about
teams
trading.
have them, they want to keep them, or the price is crazy. So, and we're not willing to give up on our future at this point. Yes, I realize that it's a glaring need that we'd like to upgrade.
A lot of teams want a 1C. That's not new. Elias Pettersson's out there. Is he a number 1 to you? It varies depending on who you talk to. There are some people who think that he's a locker room cancer. I'm not totally in that camp. He is significantly better than any center you have right now. He also has a $12 million price tag, and you're going to have to move significant salary, but we'll get there.
But it has to make sense. And, this, and I understand you guys want some work and you'd like to have.
It has nothing to do with wanting work. That is one of those, it was like a little media shot. I like Danny. Talk to Danny some nights going into games. But it's not about media wanting work. The reason I get incensed about where the Flyers are isn't because I want to have something to talk about. I could talk about anything going on with the team, and I'm perfectly fine. My content box is full. I have so many things I could break down about the team. But I care about the team actually becoming a cup contender, which you're not going to get by drafting at 15 or 18. If you don't want to make the move for a center because you're afraid it's going to change your timeline, fine, just say that. But I don't think that's what it is because they tend to talk out of both sides of their mouth.
Have a trade to keep you busy, but the reality is, if we force something after 2 weeks, we can't press undo and start from scratch again. So
yeah, God forbid you go out and get a 1C. I know. You'd have to hit undo. Sure.
We got to be sure before we make a move. But believe me, we're trying. We're looking at everything that is out there, that is available, and see. We're even asking.
I got to tell you, if you're a cynic, and I'm not typically a cynic with this guy because I'm still trying to give him a little bit of grace. He's still newish in the job. We're trying sounds very familiar to the guy that he used to work under, who would talk about trades are hard. I make a lot of calls, but calls work 2 ways. Boy, oh boy, I'm not loving that.
Questions on some guys that aren't available, just to check in and to make sure.
Does it have to be a young guy, or could you envision maybe
This is
a
a
guy
good
that's
question.
over 30, and I'm just speaking in terms of the center position, that maybe not a long-term solution, but maybe a stopgap where
If it makes sense, yes.
The answer to that should be abso-fucking-lutely not. Why would you even entertain going out and getting an over 30 center? For what purpose? To what end? You can't say that you're trying. You can't try to tell people that you're rebuilding and then go probably have to trade draft capital to go out and get a center who's over 30 for whatever reason. Like, to what end? Because you think that the team is going to be good enough to make the playoffs? I'm sorry, it's a rebuild. Why are you trying to make the playoffs in a rebuild? In year 2 of why are you entertaining it? What am I missing? Holy shit. All right, we're going to keep going.
But there's a lot that goes into play with that also. The length of the contract on the back end, the AAV obviously is another one, and what it's
they're about to clear some money off the cap after this year.
If it does make sense, absolutely.
Why?
But in most cases with those older guys, it doesn't.
Could you give a progress report on some of your?
So he kind of gives you like a yes and also a no.
Mishkov comes over. He's not probably what he's going to be eventually, but he's showing he's already a good NHL player.
Yeah,
You guys are probably playing better at 5-on-5 in terms of scoring chances than you did last year. The cap's going up. Is there any thought to, maybe not kicking it into overdrive, but maybe accelerating it faster than you thought maybe this time last year?
Charlie O'Connor with a great question. Konechny's having this excellent season. Mishkov is here already making an impact. Is there a chance they're going to try to send the rebuild into overdrive? Meaning, instead of tearing it down, that they're going to try to build it up. They're going to try to go out and get players that could make this team more of an actual contender right away.
As long as it doesn't hurt the future, it's something we're going to consider. But it's, that hasn't changed. It's for us, the future is still the key. And we're looking ahead. We're looking forward. The players are going to decide in the moment how far they want to push it. And it's been awesome to see how we talked about.
That's the problem. That right there. That is the clip. That is the damning statement. That is the thing that drives me nuts. That is what is cognitively dissonant about there being a rebuild and what they are doing right now. Let me try to scrub that back a little bit because there is a part that he just said that makes my blood boil.
The players are going to decide in the moment how far they want to push it. And it's been awesome to see how we talked about Cates' line.
The players are going to decide. So if you've been sitting back, if you have been sold this bill of goods, you've been told that the Flyers are in year 2 of a rebuild, that they're actively trying to become a team that will become a cup contender. When Briere first took over, when Keith Jones was added, when he was hired, they talked about how you have to get elite talent. Where do you get elite talent? Trades, potentially. Unlikely, but possible. The other place is very high in the draft. Last year, they let the players decide. Last year, they sold themselves on the idea that this could have been a playoff team. They did trade Sean Walker, and it cratered their team down the stretch. And ultimately, it killed their chances of making the playoffs. There was that. There was the Sealer injury. There were a couple of other things. But last year, they let the players decide. In year 1 of a rebuild, instead of tearing it down, instead of trading off the Scott Laughtons of the world, instead of trading off the Rasmus Ristolainens of the world last year, they hung on to their guys. Walker was the only one that they didn't hang on to. They let the players decide. They picked in hockey purgatory. They think that they have a very good player of the future in Jet Lashenko. And he might end up being a really good player. And maybe he does end up developing into being your 1C. And maybe Briere in that draft looks like an absolute genius. We don't know yet. We probably won't know for a few years. Lashenko probably will make the roster next year. If he has a camp like he did this year, he'll probably make it out of camp next year. So there's one of the center holes on your team. But you let the players decide last year. And you picked in hockey purgatory. Whether or not that hockey purgatory pick ends up working out for you or not remains to be seen. I have said a million times, I would have much rather be in that top 5. I would have much rather be in a position to draft a guy like Ivan Demidov and have another one of these young dynamic Russian players who could have come over here in a year or two, would have fit the timeline, could have played with Mishkov, would have made a lot of sense. They didn't put themselves in position to have that, either that spot or to have lottery luck enough to move up into the top 3, top 4. Fine. I thought this year was supposed to be a little bit different. They, to Briere's credit, they didn't add anybody of significance to make the team better. They went into the season without Carter Hart. They had Sam Ersson as the number 1, was untested really as being the number 1 guy for a whole season. He's had 3 lower body injuries that have cost him significant time. Ivan Fedotov has now reclaimed the number 2 spot after Kolosov had been crowned the number 2 goalie. Okay, fine. But you have players that teams are inquiring about. He goes on to say in this press conference, like, there are players that have been inquired about. We have talked about it before, but Joel Farabee, Morgan Frost, Rasmus Ristolainen, and Scott Laughton are 4 players that have had interest from other teams. If you're rebuilding, you can't get through the deadline without making a deal. Now, I know that there are people of the mindset, and I happen to co-host a show with at least one of them, who says the draft is really what matters. This offseason is what matters. And I keep coming back to my adage, lower the ceiling, lower the floor. If you wait until the draft, you are allowing the players to dictate, allowing the players to decide how the season plays out. You can't do that. You can't tell the fans that you're doing a rebuild and then flirt with the playoffs again. Rebuilds are hard. Rebuilds are hard to execute. A big part of that is because GMs aren't usually given the keys to the castle and then told you can tear it down. Briere was given that option, chose not to do it. He was given the cover publicly that this is going to be a rebuild, not a retool, not a retool on the fly. It was going to be a rebuild. They chose not to tear it down. This feels very much like the last few regimes. I don't want to believe that it will be, but it's kind of hard to sit back and to listen to that and say, oh, this feels like something new. It doesn't. Oh, trading Rasmus Ristolainen is a hard call because you're going to have to try to figure out a way to replace him. Yeah, it's a rebuild. Scott Laughton, last year, we don't want to take market value for Scott Laughton. We need above market value. He's a bottom 6 forward. Good leader, well-liked guy. Bottom 6 forward. You get a high draft pick offer, you take it. You get a high second for Scott Laughton, fine. Noah Cates is there. You get a conditional first, cool. Noah Cates is there. He can be Scott Laughton. Cool. Joel Farabee? Do I love trading Joel Farabee? Not necessarily. Depends on what the return is. Morgan Frost. Do I think Morgan Frost is ever going to thrive and be a legitimate two-way center? No. At least not with Torts as the coach. So why are we unable or unwilling to trade Morgan Frost? What are we doing? What's the point? You can't let these players decide. They're going to go out and try to bust their ass every night. That's fine. But Danny said it himself. He's the one who controls the roster. He's the one who manages the roster. Take some of the tools out of Tortorella's toolbox. Torts is going to coach up whoever's on the bench. Now, you might not be happy. If you trade a Scott Laughton or a Rasmus Ristolainen, does that make John Tortorella's job of winning games and trying to make it into the playoffs harder? It does. Will Torts still coach the hell out of these guys? He will. That's a credit to him. But if you're trying to rebuild, you've got to stop looking at the playoffs. And one of the things that I skipped over from early in the press conference is he says, we're like 4 points out of a playoff. We'd much rather just like have a few more points and be on the inside looking out than the outside looking in. Why? Why would you want to be in the playoff picture in year 2 of a rebuild? Where is the elite talent coming from? If you flirt with a playoff spot again, whether you get into the playoffs or you just miss it, and you end up back in hockey purgatory again, where is the elite talent coming from? You're saying you don't want to jeopardize the future, presumably not trading draft capital to go out and try to get a 1C. You're not willing to do that. At the same time, you're not willing to deal probably your most attractive defenseman to other teams because you're worried about the hole that it's going to create in year 2 of a rebuild. You're afraid of that. You're afraid of, I guess, the leadership hole that trading Scott Laughton is going to be. If you're scared, get a dog. It's supposed to be a rebuild. This whole press conference sounded like, well, we're gonna allow the team to dictate what happens. Bullshit. Bullshit. There are executives around the league that I can almost assure you rip their hair out thinking about the opportunity that has been afforded here and how 2 years in, it very much looks like it could be getting squandered. I get the idea that the Flyers have a lot of money coming off the cap. There's some retained salary. There's some dead money on the cap that they're going to get a little bit of flexibility going into the offseason, and that's fine. But you can't tell the fans that you understand what a rebuild is and how to get elite talent and then go out and do the exact opposite. I don't give a shit if this Flyers team wins another game this year. It would make my life a little bit more enjoyable going down and covering all the home games. It would. But if they ultimately put themselves in position to go get another elite talent to pair with Matvei Mishkov, and then you say 2025-26 season is where we flip the switch. We want to start competing next year. But we now have 2 elite talents, Mishkov and whoever the next kid's going to be. And you feel good about Lichenko? Guess what? I'm on board with you. You want to deal some of the draft compensation at the draft to try to go out and get a 1C and use your high pick this year to try to get one more elite talent, maybe a center? Awesome. I'm fully behind you. But if you're going to seriously allow this team to dictate whether or not you chase a playoff spot or you deal some of the talent to send yourself closer into the lottery and give yourself a chance at a top 3, top 4 pick, I don't know what we're doing here, man. I have a very hard time rationalizing it. We have all gotten to watch a lot of mediocre at best Flyers hockey for a very long time. It would just be nice to finally be able to say there's a lot of good to look forward to. There's a lot of talent in the pipeline. There isn't right now. This draft is absolutely critical. It cannot be overstated. 3 firsts and 3 seconds as of right now before they make any other deals. You need to nail this draft. If you don't deserve a job. That's where we're at.